CEO of the McNay Art Museum, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to another evening in our Birdsong Brackenridge Birdhouse Exhibition Conversation Series. We are delighted to have you with us tonight as we continue these inspiring conversations. First and foremost, we extend our sincere gratitude to the generous sponsors whose support and collaboration have made this series possible: Brackenridge Park Conservancy, AIA San Antonio, and Lucifer Lighting Company. Your partnerships allow us to bring insightful discussions to our community, enriching our understanding of the built environment and its role in shaping our lives. I also want to, yes? I also want to acknowledge my colleagues here at the McNay for their dedication to delivering outstanding programming to our audience. As the first dedicated modern art museum in Texas, the McNay stands as a testament to the power of architecture to inspire and transform. From the historic Spanish colonial revival home of our founder, Marion Kugler McNay, to the most recent addition, the Jane and Arthur Steeren Center for Exhibitions, designed by Jean-Paul Viguier, our museum is a living dialogue between tradition and innovation. Each program in this series invites us to pause and consider how art, architecture, and environment come together to define a sense of place. These conversations encourage us to reflect on how the spaces we inhabit, whether historic or contemporary, shape our collective identity and daily experience. In doing so, we celebrate not only the beauty of design, but also the enduring connection between creativity, community, and place. Thank you for being here tonight, and I hope you enjoy this evening's presentation. As a reminder, please silence your devices. And now I will turn things over to Gilbert Matthews to introduce our guests. Thank you.
Woo! Well, hello, everyone. Well, I'm privileged to introduce the three speakers tonight, and these would be Marlon Blackwell, who's seated to your right on the end, Stephen Monroe, who is seated immediately closest to me, and John T. Edge, who's in the middle. So I'll start out by saying that it's really a quirk of fate that this evening came about. Marlon Blackwell is a very prominent architect nationally. I'll tell you some of his background in a moment. But he was chosen to design the Greenfield Farm Writers Residency in Mississippi, in Oxford. And the two other individuals have helped spearhead this. And I met them through travel to Mississippi, to Oxford with a friend a summer ago. So I didn't know at that time that Marlon, who we've known many years, would be chosen to design this project. And it's kind of a confluence of circumstances that they're all three together. Now, about Marlon, he received the AIA Gold Award, which is the highest award that an architect can receive in this country, in addition to receiving over 200 design awards over the years. He's the former Fay Jones Distinguished Professor at that School of Architecture in Fayetteville, Arkansas. In May, his firm's design of the Heartland Whole Health Institute which is located at Crystal Bridges at their campus. It was open to great critical acclaim. Marlon currently teaches an advanced design studio at Yale, as well as MIT, and Auburn's Rural Studio. This year, he was asked to conceive and oversee the American Pavilion at the Venice Biennale. Tonight, we're honored to have the first public, I'm going to repeat this, the first public unveiling in San Antonio of Marlon's architectural plans for this Greenfield Farm Writers Residency. All right, Marlon, we look forward to seeing that. Stephen Monroe, who's closest, is chair and associate professor in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric at the University of Mississippi. He's a faculty member in the Center for the Study of Southern Culture and co-founder alongside Renvy Pittman, also here tonight, of the Grove Scholars. This is a program to advance student, choose my words carefully here, I guess growth, personal growth, and entry into worlds which maybe they wouldn't be able to enter but for a program for them. Stephen serves as director of the William Morris Awards for Southern Writing, and he's a renowned William Faulkner scholar. John T. writes and hosts the television program True South, which broadcasts on the SEC network, now owned by ESPN. I learned earlier with John T. that this program has viewership upwards of 2 million people in the South. He's the author of A Food History of the Modern South and has just published a memoir, House of Smoke, which explores his Southern identity. John T. also teaches narrative nonfiction at the University of Mississippi and is leading the development of the Greenfield Farm Writers Residency set on William Faulkner's what was a one-time mule farm. Let's give a hearty Texas welcome to Marlon, Stephen, and John T.
Thank you so much, Gilbert, and everyone here at the McNay. Thank you for having us. It's a beautiful museum and facility. I'd also like to thank our friend and collaborator, Renvy Pittman, who is here. Gilbert mentioned her earlier. And then our hosts, Suzanne and Gilbert Matthews, who have just been wonderful to us so far. We're really grateful to you for hosting us in San Antonio. Thank you very much. So we're going to have a discussion tonight between two visionary people from different fields. So this is an interdisciplinary discussion about art, architecture, writing, and place. And after we talk for a while, Marlon will lead us through the first reveal of the project that John T. envisioned and that is now becoming a reality just outside of Oxford, Mississippi. And so I don't think we'll figure out the U.S. South tonight, but we'll talk around it a little bit, and then we can all spend the rest of our lives trying to figure it out. So I wanted to start here. This is Roanoke, and this home was built in 1848 in Oxford. It's about 7/10 of a mile from the Oxford Square, and William Faulkner moved in here with his family in 1930, and it was kind of run down, and they had to do a lot of renovation. Okay, I'll start over. No, I'm just kidding. They had to do a lot of renovation, put plumbing in and electrical, and in fact, it was in such disrepair that when he brought his wife Estelle to see the place, she sat down right there on that front stoop and wept. Yes, that she was not excited, but they fixed it up, and it's a beautiful home, and so I wanted to start here and just ask maybe Marlon first, speaking as an architect. Do you have any thoughts about Roanoke as a place before we start to talk about William Faulkner as a person?
Sure. Well, I've only been once. You know, we did a drive-by. Every time we come to Oxford, it's straight to a meeting room in the facilities. An incredibly uninspiring place.
Indeed.
And then occasionally we'll get out to Greenfield, and then after that we go look for pork rinds that are made nearby. But we did go the last trip and did a tour through it. And the thing that I remember most about is that very much the image that you're showing here is this sort of walk through the shadows to get there. I was just in Italy a couple weeks ago, my partner and I, and I went to see Carlo Scarpa's Brion Cemetery, and very similar, you walk through the shadows to get to the light, so to speak. I mean, there's a grace to it and a grandness, but I also found it to be quite modest in a lot of ways. And then when you go inside, you expect this splendor and grandeur, and it's really kind of country with a K. So you know what I mean? It's like feels very domestic, and I felt like, well, somebody's lived here, and that was really clear. And there's some outbuildings also that I don't know enough about, but I also thought that made it feel somewhat like a compound. And I don't know, it was just this sort of, you felt like it was a place of work rather than just a place of leisure. That's how I saw it. Maybe it's because I know a little bit about the history, but I don't know, just it felt very human in a way, and not ostentatious that you often see with these sorts of Greek revival type of homes.
Yes, yes.
That was my take on it.
Absolutely. And if you read William Faulkner, chances are the words you're reading were written here at Roanoke. He loved that place. He loved to work there. It was a place of work, as Marlon suspected. And he did not like traveling very much. He liked to be there at the house working. John T., what about you? What do you think of the house?
That house is for many a place of pilgrimage. My wife and I live 4 blocks away, and on Saturday mornings I'll be sitting out front drinking coffee in front of our house, and I can watch the pilgrims file down the street. And they usually stop about a block before they get to our house, because there's another house owned by our friends the Lewises that looks quite similar. And oftentimes those pilgrims will walk up and knock on their door thinking it's Faulkner's house. I mention that because this house is integrated within a neighborhood. It is 4 blocks away from our home. We have a very modest cottage-style home built in 1938, but 4 blocks away you enter what feels like a park and does serve Oxford in many ways. And the university community, the university owns Roanoke. It serves as a park where people walk their dogs and have picnics and the like. And so those true cross currents, I think, speak to Faulkner and Oxford. It's a place of pilgrimage for many. It's certainly an inspiring place if you're a writer and you live in Oxford, but it's also a part of your everyday life. Faulkner lives in Oxford. I'll say one more thing, because I was thinking about this, looking at this picture of Roanoke, and there's a recent photograph taken for our friend Ralph Eubanks, who wrote a great book called A Place Like Mississippi, and it is a study of Mississippi's literary heritage. And he arranged a photo to be taken by Langdon Clay of current authors in Oxford. And when assembled at the side porch at Roanoke, 42 people stand in that photograph. So the idea of Faulkner's legacy is so much alive today. 42 published authors in a small town like ours. It's remarkable.
Yes, absolutely. And we hope you all will come to Oxford and visit Roanoke. It's a great place to see. And unlike some writers' homes, it's exactly as it was, pretty much exactly as it was when Faulkner died. And when the family left the home to the university in the 70s, most everything was there. And so you can, if you sneak behind the barriers and open the drawers, you can see things still in the drawers.
Yeah.
And his pipe cleaners and all kinds of things like that. And when famous writers come through, they are pilgrims to Roanoke. And Bill Griffith is the wonderful curator there, and he's a character himself. We call him Mr. Bill, like people called Mr. Faulkner Mr. Bill. Okay, so what about William Faulkner himself? And this project that we're introducing tonight takes Faulkner as inspiration and places inspiration. Marlon, what are your impressions of Faulkner? When did you first encounter him? And can you reflect a minute or two on William Faulkner, the person and the writer?
Oh, wow. I am totally out of my league here. To me, it's just, as you know, growing up in the South, being from Alabama, so Faulkner is just kind of in your blood. And you felt like he was the sort of the gold standard, for narrative and writing, from the South. So it's just It's like talking about like Bear Bryant, Faulkner, Bear Bryant football, Faulkner writing. It's just kind of interchangeable in a way. So that was my impression. I told John T. when we saw the RFQ, I said, you had us at Faulkner. So that's like, we'll apply for this project for sure. But he struck me as somebody that was, I think, really wanted to be a person of the land. That's what he wrote about in many ways, and the characters that were either born into that place or came to that place in some way, and lived out, the theater of life in the land. And so they were almost kind of interchangeable. It was like a terrain where everything's included, right? The land, the people, the culture, all of that. I talked a little bit about this before, but I was a Bible salesman to put my way through school at Auburn 5 summers, because I came from a family that you'd either go to sell Bibles or do something, but in order to go to school. But so I always felt like, I used to tell people, I felt like I worked 5 summers in the rural South in places that people only read about in Faulkner novels, and I got to be with some of these characters and live some of these kind of wild scenarios that come along with that.
That's great. And were you a successful Bible salesman?
I'll show you later.
Okay. Okay. I have my checkbook, so. John T., what about you? And as a writer, what's you're a Southern writer? What's your relationship to Faulkner? And here in this photograph, we see him. Was he really a farmer?
Yeah. So for me, Faulkner was graduate school. When I moved to Oxford, Mississippi in 1995, it was to earn a master's degree in Southern Studies, an interdisciplinary program. I wanted to figure out my relationship to my region, to the place that made me. I grew up in Georgia, moved to Mississippi to figure out my Georgia birth and my Mississippi existence. And that program took me through reading Faulkner. I read Absalom 3 different times in graduate level classes. Faulkner was the text, and to grapple with Faulkner was to grapple with the big challenges the American South has faced, and in a way the American South in that has been a proxy for the nation. So Faulkner for me was that. Faulkner for me was a text. And then more recently, Faulkner has been an inspiration for me. This picture you see before you is of William Faulkner on a tractor at Greenfield Farm, the place we will interpret by way of this project. And you heard earlier in the introduction that Gilbert mentioned that this was Faulkner's mule farm. Faulkner bought this property in 1938 when everybody else was converting to tractors. And what does Faulkner sit astride right now? A tractor. He was a man of many complications. And this picture in this moment captures his devotion to the land. This is a period in his life when he said, I aim to be a farmer who writes. And that was posturing, yes, but it was also a genuine and serious devotion to the agricultural life, to rural life, and I want to understand it and bring it to the page.
So now let's move towards a discussion of Greenfield Farm.
Yeah.
How many miles out of town is the old mule farm, and when did you first go out there and start to think of this incredible idea?
Yeah. So the farm is 13 miles east of Oxford along Highway 30, which takes you from Oxford to New Albany. And in that span of time from Oxford east to New Albany, you're traveling back in time. William Faulkner was born in New Albany, Mississippi. So on the way from Oxford to New Albany, you're reaching back in time just as Faulkner did when he bought this property in 1938. As I mentioned also, he's raising mules here when everyone else is converting to tractors. This is an exercise in time travel for Faulkner when he purchases this land.
About 600 acres. What was it originally?
He bought 360 acres. He sold a script to MGM, to Hollywood, in 1938, and his idea was that he would bank the money from that, $25,000 if my memory serves. And instead of spending his money, he would bank it in the land. Again, this reverence for the land and the possibilities. He ended up taking out a loan after all. But this devotion to this land, this belief in this land is still alive in this land. It's the reason we're doing the work.
He was a great writer. He was not a great businessman. As you can tell, as farming was becoming mechanized, he invested in mules, which was not a great idea. And if you come to Oxford, down on the square, our old department store, Nelson's, go to the back and you can see a letter that he sent to the owner instead of payment towards his bill. And he did owe money all across town until he won the Nobel Prize, and a movie or two had been made. Okay, now what is this picture?
Yeah, so this is the lodge. This is no longer extant out at Greenfield Farm. It burned in a forest fire, I've learned more recently. But this was where Faulkner retired to write. This is where Faulkner made his hunt camp. This was at a point in the topography of this place. This property is up on a ridge line, so as you ascend the ridge line, you'll come to the highest point, really, where you can look down one slope and down the other, and that's where Faulkner perched this cabin.
Okay, and can we pause for a moment before we begin the reveal, and can you two talk about the collaboration? Because I've been impressed just listening to you speak to each other. I think it really is a creative collaboration, and you found the perfect architect for this project. And it seems to me that Marlon cares very much about it. But it's not always easy to collaborate. But you two seem to be doing a great job. Can you talk about the partnership?
Sure. First of all, we like to say in the office, there are no bad projects. There are only bad clients. And so we have a great client and a great vision with John T. He came with a vision, and he has been hands-on and engaged with his team, which I think is very important as an architect. They talk about the three-legged stool. You have a great client, a great design team, and a great contractor to kind of make everything go well. So we've got 2 out of the 3 so far, and we'll get the third one here coming on this open bid process.
Soon.
Fingers crossed. But it's been really great. We also have a great team. I have, again, my partner, who Ati, is here. She likes to sit in the back so she can film.
She's right
but and Michael Davis, Carly, Christian, all these folks who make up our team, plus all the consultants, Native Habitats, who's a Mississippi landscape architecture firm, Robert Poor, and Rob, I just call him Rob Anderson, who used to actually work with Ed Blake, who I worked with on several projects in Indianapolis and stuff. And so we have and all of our consultants are pretty much from Mississippi. So we know we're interlopers coming from Arkansas. But we formed a team that we believe, could listen, that could help manifest the vision that John T. has. He's also set up stakeholders for us to better understand the project, which was bringing in writers who challenged our own thoughts about what this could be, things that we didn't quite understand, that you're going to have folks from outside Mississippi who may have ties to Mississippi who primarily live in urban conditions. So being out in the boonies, ideas around security, there's a lot of nature deficit disorder too.
Yeah.
So, they've never seen a possum cross a trail. So, how do you deal with that in the design aspect of things, and in terms of the arrangement of structures and all of that. So that's an ongoing discussion. And I feel like this collaboration has been a conversation like we're having right now, and us just listening carefully and then taking the liberties to act boldly in what we're trying to do.
I saw that so much. I had an idea of what we might do out there, but that idea has been amplified and in the most beautiful way. You think about that structure we just saw, that very much vernacular structure, that lodge that Faulkner made his hunting cabin. What we're building out there reflects the vernacular architecture that exists on that land today and has made, has defined the architecture of the American South. You can see a through line, and that's to the credit of Marlon and his team, that we're building something modern in this land and reviving this land that went fallow after Faulkner died. When Faulkner died in '62, it fell out of family hands. The university acquired it in 1990. And until we stepped onto that land and began to revive it, the university never figured out what to do with it. So there's a through line between what we're going to build out there, thanks to Marlon and his team, and what was already out there. And it's an honest through line, and I'm appreciative.
Great. And one of the things I love about the project is it will give aspiring and working artists and writers a place to work and to find privacy, which is harder and harder to do these days. But privacy is something that William Faulkner valued tremendously. And can you guys, as artists yourselves, just talk for a minute about privacy? How do you find the time to do the work that needs to be done? And we've got a lot of students in the audience. So we're lucky to have wonderful devices and technology, but how do you find that private time you need to write and you need to design?
You should talk about that.
For me, it's getting up early in the morning. Stealing time, that's deeply important for me. I do think about Faulkner in this. Faulkner was interviewed in the Paris Review. I think the year was maybe 51. I can't recall exactly. But the interviewer asked Faulkner, so if you die and you were reincarnated, what might you want to come back as? And he said he wanted to come back as a buzzard, because a buzzard could eat anything it wanted, and nobody bothered him. And that's the definition for a writer, like to be left alone. And that's what we're building out here, is a place to be left alone. I knew about that quote, that buzzard quote, and one of the very first times, and oftentimes Marlon's seen them, that I've walked this land, you'll see in one of the structures out there, there's a nest of buzzards. And when you disturb the buzzards, they take flight. Black soaring into the sky, big wingspan. It kind of takes your breath away. And I think about Faulkner each and every time, and that want for solace, want for quiet, which is what a writer needs.
Yeah. I don't know. It sounds great. I work in a kind of controlled chaos, so I like your idea of stealing time, and so that's what I have to do. They teach you in school that you're slow, and then you sit and you think, and then you're inspired, and then you make something. What I try to do is think about it like Noguchi, the sculptor, said. There's two ways to create. One is to have an idea and make something. The other is to make something and figure out what you made. So I spend a lot of time just making stuff. And the reality in the professional world is talent works quickly. You don't often have that kind of reflection time. You have to absorb it in real time, like osmotic, going to the site, listening to clients, being with your team, all of this, and then you have to make something. You have to act with sketches. You have to have, and then you have to have critics, right? And like I say, my best favorite critic is up there, Ati, who she'll set me straight, when we make the drawings and stuff. So that's really important. And then to develop lots of things, right? Just like writing's iterative, and those iterations are critique the things that you're doing. So you have multiple critiques going on. But that's how we get there.
Great, and that's a perfect segue. Would you all like to see the project? I'm going to pass the clicker down to Marlon.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought it's a slow reveal because
Yes.
As I understand it. How's this work?
There we go.
You're doing great.
Okay. So as I understood, I was supposed to give some background on the firm
Indeed.
so forth, and while we're a little bit about our practice and such. Obviously, we're based in Arkansas, and we've Ati and I have been at it for about 30 years plus, you know. And we have a monograph that came out a few years ago called Radical Practice, and I immediately got pushback about, how can you have a radical practice in Arkansas? And I said, well, we're not thinking about the avant-garde or something being revolutionary. We think about it in the 14th century medieval adjective, the root Latin word of radicalus, which is really about roots of or pertaining or forthcoming from roots. And so for us, it's about staying true to your roots and to the fundamentals that you need to understand a place and to act in the place or places in which we work to affect change and transformation. And that's what we think that's pretty radical, especially when the authentic focus of the practice is on making buildings and places, which in itself is kind of radical these days, if you think about it. But this is our office. Something we did for $69 a square foot. Ati found this building. We bought it. It had a fake rock on it. We tried to pull it off, and it also pulled the structure with it, so we stopped. And we just said, well, what can we do with paint? So we just paid a guy to paint stripes on it. It took him 4 months. And when he was finished, he said, next time I'll call you, you don't call me. And then we took every existing opening in the elevation and just replaced it with windows that we liked. Breuer, Leverowitz, all of that. That was best we could do for $69 a square foot. But I want to come back to this. So we like to say we make work that's of the place, for the place, and in the place. We're place-based, but sometimes necessarily out of place. And we started just working locally. We've had the good fortune to work with the State Department on embassy work, so we've done everything from carports to honey houses to a new American embassy for the poorest country in the world, Central African Republic. Hopefully it'll get built. And so we made a little map of all the different places that we've worked. Gil already mentioned that we had the privilege and honor this year to be a lead designer for the U.S. Pavilion in the Venice Biennale. I did not conceive of the whole thing. It was actually our dean, Peter McKeith, came to us with an idea about a year ago that says, hey, I have an idea. He always has ideas, he has tons of ideas. Some stick, some don't. So I was kind of prepared, okay, let me hear what the idea is. He goes, how about we submit for the American Pavilion this year? And I said, okay, what's your idea? And he goes, let's call it Porch, an Architecture of Generosity. And I was like, oh, that's a winner. That's a winner. So I said, what do you need me to do? And he says, well, we got to have a design in order for the submission. I said, that's great, we'll do it. I said, when's it due? He goes, 2 weeks. And I said, how long have you known about this? Well, I've been thinking about it for months. And I was like, well, you could have told us. So we threw together a team in 2 weeks and came up just, again, a sketch. We looked at the pavilion. Of course, we had been working on porches. Every project we do has a porch in it. Now, it's a little different from the definition of porch, which is usually something that's added to the building. Ours are actually integral for the most part, except for Fly Right Chicken in Austin. But the rest of them are really integrated extensions of the architecture itself. I also had lots of experience as a Bible salesman, sitting on porches, selling Bibles, and I did really well. This guy gave me an award here back in 1970. He was running for president at the time, and just shows you can survive 70s fashion here. I heard it's coming back around, a lot of mileage. But so I had this experience to go from, being from the South, porch, man, I understood that. Then I also had this unique experience. As soon as we got the project, I read The Bear. I had just wanted to read The Bear because I'd heard about this story, and I had the unique experience as a wrestler in Colorado back in 1970s in high school, having to wrestle a live bear, a wrestling bear, for practice one day. Our coach had this brilliant idea. We're all going to wrestle a bear, and we didn't quite understand that the bear, A, was real, and 2, it knew wrestling moves, all the same wrestling moves. Anyway, it's a long story. I have to have a few bourbons to tell it all. But I thought, man, this is all serendipity, the bear, and everything's coming together. And then this is what we were working with, this totally uninspiring building in Venice, the U.S. Pavilion. I know some people love it. I find it just painful in so many ways. But this is what we had to deal with. So we were able to pick drawings of this, and very quickly, again, getting this for Peter, who was the lead commissioner, Susan Chin with her organization in New York, and then Rod Bigelow, who is the director of the Crystal Bridges Art Museum. They all put their forces together. And so our idea of the porch was to take the U-shaped courtyard and unify this tripartite scheme with a singular element, the porch. All out of wood, could not touch the existing building, so it all had to cantilever off the building and kind of sort of try to transform the outside, which people rarely do. They usually put the exhibit on the inside and call it a day. And so we were working with a great landscape architect team, Julie Bargman and 10 by 10, Ross and I can't think, Mara, excuse me. And so this is what we came up with, all out of mass timber, Austrian spruce. We thought about how this could be a unifier, a way of creating shade. One thing we've learned when working like Shelby Farms in Memphis, where there's shade, there's people. We took the soils that Julie did of the Venetian soils and made rammed earth bricks to kind of make the plinth and the courtyard. So we call it a porch yard that we made here. And then we used the haint blue that you often find in the soffits that were brought from the Gullah Geechee culture, Western African culture, that were enslaved when they're brought along the coast of South Carolina and Georgia. Haints are troubled spirits, and they don't like water, so they would paint the soffits blue. They also have a pragmatic aspect to it, supposedly to keep wasp out and spiders. That's debatable, but it's worked on ours. But anyway, so that brings a little bit of Southern culture back as well. And this has been a huge hit here. We had all these architects for the first day. Norman Foster came, Rep. Koolhaus showed up, David Chipperfield, and just architects from all over. My favorite story that I heard, I did not witness, was 4 German architects, all dressed in all black, standing on the porch watching music going on and dancing and people hanging out. And they just stood there for 2 or 3 minutes, and finally one turned to the other and goes, "This is joyous." And that was it. That summed it up. So anyway, so porch was something that we're prepared for, and that we were doing this, I think, as a kind of culmination of our own experiences. But storytelling is really important. I want to kind of run through this because actually John T. asked me that because when we were in the interview, we talked about this. But we often say we like to try to use an economy of means for a maximum of meaning. We come from a place in the South where 1 + 1 can never equal 2. It's got to equal 3 or 5 or 7. We have to create value out of every move we make. So we had an opportunity in an Eastern Orthodox Christian church and turn it basically a welding shed into a church. And we thought we meant tear it down and build on the footprint. And we were told, no, we have $100 a square foot, and we want to build this church, because they were worshiping in a really rundown place. So we, using a Greek proportioning system from the Greek Orthodox early Christian churches, we developed a proportioning system using Greek proportion system to make this new figure, all out of box rib metal. And then we added a little bit of Corbusier in the canopy, because I believe everything goes better with a little bit of Corb, and made this new church, and cut a window in the existing building, and they got the iconostasis. The only thing they didn't have was a dome. They wanted a dome on the top because they're Byzantine. It wouldn't work because it was a pre-engineered building, so they let us put it in the plinth or in the plenum. They didn't have the money for the dome we spec'd. They didn't know if they could build one that would work. So we were in the middle of construction going, what are we going to do? They got to have a dome. And our contractor said, well, I've got a friend out in the mountains about 20 miles from here, used to be a steel worker and loves beer. And so if we trade him some beer, he's got something for us we could use. So we get 2 cases of Bud Light, and we got a satellite dish. And then we were able to skim coat that dish and then jack it up on a scissor lift, and they have their dome. So that's how we roll in Arkansas. So that's part of the good story, good storytelling that projects have to do. And again, using resources, which is something we're doing in this as well. And of course, one of the parishioners was so excited because I told Father John, now you have a direct connection with God. He said, yes, but it's pointing the wrong way. And then this other fellow said, well, you wouldn't believe this, but I know where we can get a bishop's chair with walnut, crushed purple velvet, and I can get it for free. And I said, oh, where? And he goes, well, it's from an ad campaign at a local liquor store. And I said, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, I just don't know what we're going to do with the embroidered CR on the chair. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, like Crown Royal. And Father John overheard us, and he came over and said, no, Christ the Redeemer. Let's get the chair. So, and that's how we roll. So, these are the kinds of things that kind of get you excited about architecture. And all these things go into a roux that help prepare us for this project. So I'm done with my part, so except the reveals.
Wonderful. And so, John T., talk a little bit more about your vision and for Greenfield Farm.
This is a picture from Greenfield Farm as it is now. The oak in the background is one of 12, I think maybe there are 13 oaks of this size. It's only one slide, I don't know how far to go. So there are 12 or 13 of these oaks out at Greenfield Farm. Faulkner walked beneath these oaks, and we made a short film when we first began the project, and we hauled out this desk from my house. And that's my great friend and one of our advisory board members, Beth Ann Finley, out there in the woods by herself. And to me, it speaks to the need. So there are approximately 300 artist residencies across the United States of America. They mostly cluster in the Northeast and the Northwest. There's a dearth of writers' residencies in the American South. There is no full-time, nonprofit, stipend-supported writers' residency in the entire state of Mississippi, a state that has given much to our nation. Of course, Faulkner, but more recently, people like Natasha Trethewey, our two-time U.S. Poet Laureate, and Jesmyn Ward, two-time National Book Award winner, the first. First woman. And so this dearth of support for writers in the American South, to me, this picture speaks to that and speaks to the inspiration for this work. So how do we reanimate this fallow farm? This place Faulkner loved so much and from which he drew inspiration and where he did work. So that's what drives us today. How do we reanimate this place? And we set about trying to figure out what the highest and best purpose for this land might be. I'm a writer as well, as Gilbert kindly introduced, and I wrote my last book at a place called Rivendell, just outside of Swanee, Tennessee. And my great friend Margaret Wrinkle, who's a columnist for the New York Times, wrote her first book there called Late Migrations. And then the owner of Rivendell decided to turn it into a wellness retreat. There was no institutional support. It was at the whim of a beneficiary. So I began to think about how we marry this property with the University of Mississippi, place that's already stewarding Faulkner's legacy by way of Roanoke. So we began to build plans. We began to mock up an idea that we would allow Beth Ann to step away from that desk and actually step into a beautiful micro-campus, which is what we aim to build out there in the woods, so that we can grow a new crop out at Greenfield Farm, a new generation of writers from Mississippi and the world.
Great. And so now we're ready for the full reveal. You want to talk about the design?
Yeah. Well, we can do that. Let's see. So this is the farm today. It's about 20.4 acres from the 360. And it's a distressed landscape. I mean, it's got some great trees and things. Native Habitats came up with a brilliant idea to create a regenerative landscape. So it's about a 100-year plan to bring it back. And these riders will come, and they'll be kind of that duration and their own duration there of, up to 6 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay. So they'll be part of that, as this landscape slowly restores itself in what they've outlined as a plan. And here you can see Oxford, New Albany is where I believe Faulkner was born.
Correct.
And so it's about halfway between out in the woods. And then the existing conditions, the house, which is now crumbling down. There's a corn crib that we're going to save and use as a day studio. You know, we basically, and of course, architects in the audience will know, you know, when you're asked to give an estimated cost, you know, what this might be, which we did. We did a lot of research with a cost estimator and stuff, and then presented it to the university, and they immediately said, well, that's great, and then they cut a third of it out. But we were smart. We said, well, how many, John T., how many writers do we need to be here? Absolutely minimum. And it was like 4, and then 2 day studios with a gathering shed where they would come together, library, a communal kitchen, living room, places for art, and business offices and that sort of thing, and then a caretaker's accommodations. So that was sort of the process. We're currently in construction documents. So the images we're going to show you, these are just sort of homemade. We haven't done anything with the fundraising where you outsource the rendering and stuff. So it's kind of in process, but just to give you an idea. But we did come through the design, schematic design and the design development process on budget, which is amazing in its own right. And I think it comes from John T. making the decision not to try to have the whole apple, so to speak. We'll have 4 writers, and that allowed us to get things, I think, into budget. So we did a cultural landscape report, a lot of research on, I believe it was Susan was involved with that as well. And she also works, Susan Houtham, with the Eudora Welty farm, or garden, excuse me,
Correct.
in Jackson. And she really kind of spearheaded this, and then we all worked editing. You did a lot of editing work to get this together and really understand the history of this place, everything from the indigenous settlements to the times during slavery, as well as its current, the farm when he was there in its current state. And so this kind of really laid out an understanding of the land. You want to say anything about that at all? Or no, keep going.
No, keep going, man.
Okay. So we did site assessment and programming, and just really trying to understand what we were given, and then the world is just given to you, and if we try to figure out how to represent it on the terms in which we think it would be best accepted. And Robert Port, our landscape architect, made these beautiful drawings of the land going out into, he's just a poet in himself. I have a hard time understanding him. He's about as Mississippi as it gets. So it's like, like he got marbles in his mouth.
He's like a landscape mystic.
Yeah, mystic. He's amazing, and I just have to listen harder. But he's great.
Well, normally John T. and I speak like that as well.
Is that true? Really? I haven't heard. Okay, more bourbon. So okay, so it's a regeneration. This is 61 today, and they have a plan. I'm not going to go through all of it about how to restore this thing back to its a more pristine nature. And so, thinking about things about security, things about community, so forth, and that way, the contour of the land, it has a lot more pitch and fall, a whole stream that runs along the east side here. This is north facing up. We came up with the idea of sort of taking a slow meander into the entry and coming to face with the corn crib and a cabin by Will Campbell. How many know who Will Campbell was? Will Campbell was Martin Luther King's, one of his closest advisor, and is an activist preacher, civil rights preacher.
Radical Baptist preacher from South Mississippi.
Yeah, and his cabin, he's passed on, but his cabin has been moved here, and that'll be another one of the day studios that we're currently preserving, and then we're, in that corn crib, we're inserting a day studio, so it's like a chicken in a basket, you know, so you have the ruin restored to some degree, and then you'll have this free-floating studio in the middle of it. And this is it here, the corn crib, and then Will Campbell's cabin, which we're currently working on. We won't show images of that just now. We're still kind of working through that. But one of the things we're faced with was budget. And so we came up with an idea and from the different figures that we developed for the gathering shed staff resident is to use the exact same structure. So we didn't have the money for mass timber, which is what we wanted to do. So we're using a mass of timber. And so we're just using gang nail trusses that can be prefabricated by any residential truss manufacturer. So for the gathering shed, it works as a reverse moment truss. It makes a shed roof, and then we flip it upside down, and we make the shot trot, which is a shotgun with a dog trot for the cabins, and then in the middle of the staff residence, we just cut it in half and make a shed for that. So we're just making one structure system for all of it, and that has really helped because you keep the trades all in and gathered together. And then the gathering shed, of course, the inspiration are these great agricultural buildings and so forth. We, again, we just made it as simple as we could, but we had lots of inspirations.
And that the barn on the far left was actually the barn that was out at Greenfield Farm at one point.
Yeah. And then just some initial sketches, trying to figure out how to make a plan. So again, this idea of toggling back and forth between the local, the global, and the universal, we're actually looking at the vernacular, but also mindful of things like the free plan by Corbusier or whatever, how we wanted the different programmatic elements to float inside the big box of this. Just one big porch, that's it, looking out over the creek and that we have on the lot. So this is it, just a very simple shed with its side porch so that people in the day studios can access it directly through trails, through the landscape. And then we have a series of light monitors that bring light down into the building as well. And I was really inspired by an exhibit in New York by Amanda Williams, who's an architect and artist from Chicago, who really works with color. She deals with race. She deals with architecture. But she had been looking at, I'm having a brain fart from Tuskegee, George Washington Carver, his pigment paints that he made from the soils of clay and indigo and things of that nature, and applied it to wood and makes her painting. So we're working really with Delta, Bill works out of Austin, to color the wood in specific ways to create, this is more of the orange and browns, but we've been looking at blue. The cladding is all in metal. It's camo metal. We found out folks in Houston that could print leaves onto metal coils, and then you're working with mooring panels, and then they corrugate it. And it's a typical regular corrugation, so you minimize the shadow play on it. We call it camo, but John T. had to get it past the chancellor, who's quite conservative, and he said, we've got to come up with another name. I can't go in there and say, we're covering this up in camo.
You're overspeaking. You wouldn't have to sell that hard. He loved it.
Well, I know that, but we called it biophilic cladding, which has its own problems. So anyways, but that's what we're doing. And so we just make a carapace, a shell, with that. But just everybody's seen corrugated metal,
Indeed.
Keep moving. And then on the inside, it's just very simple pine, local pine, and pine ceilings, and just a very simple gathering space, a dining table. Again, you only got 6 folks at any one time there. Maybe you might have events for the university out there, but there's a library. There's cut-throughs with, again, these different places to bounce light deep within the building. And then the library itself, which is all of these books, their own library that they'll start, but also visitors reading, their books and so forth. A lot of these folks are trying to find their own voice, so it could be books they're inspired by, but this is a constantly revolving exhibit at one level of books, and then books that make it up, and just places to be like this. Ati had this beautiful idea of a box, a sitting window, and then covering it in fabric, so that it's just a big nest that you can hang out in. Again, this community kitchen, and then a whole gallery of art that wraps around from the entry and into the space as well, using, again, local artists and that sort of nature. So that's the gathering shed, just very simple with its big porch, and sits out in the landscape together. And then in a similar kind of language, we have the staff residence, the caretaker with their porch, and just a very simple plan for a family, and then also where all the vehicles will go, the garage out there in the back. And then finally, the cabins, the 4 cabins. You go to the south, and you know the history of the porch is both one of generosity, one of welcoming, that threshold between the private world and the public world. But it's also got a tortured history a little bit too. Certainly in slavery, there's the big house. And the porch at the big house was always wrapping around the entire building because it was really about monitoring and oversight. But the porches we were drawn to were those of the slave where they lived, simple porches that faced inward to create a community in a sense, or where people could see each other. And so the simplicity of that, the human and modesty of that humanistic aspect of that is what we were drawn to. And of course, dog trots, creating their own breezes, these sort of places where you could hang out but be filled a sense of, how would you say, refuge and prospect, so to speak. So we kind of combine these two, the shotgun and the dog trot, into the shot trot. And just initial sketches on that. Again, I'm going to confess, we worked sketches, but Michael Davis and our team actually came up with the idea of the long silhouette. I was working on a short silhouette, a visage, and it wasn't working. Because you know how you have an idea, and then you get to the site, and the site says, we're not doing that. So that's what the site kept doing. I kept fighting it, and one day he said, well, what about this? We do this a lot. And I was like, that's it right there.
And I have to say, too, I walked into this project thinking about a dog trot because I wanted something where the writers have their own space to work, and they're going to be out there for 3 weeks at a time. They would need a place to live, and then literally crossing that breezeway to your office is an important kind of psychological step to take. And so I had this very simple idea, and we got to something.
And the writers told us that, too.
They
wanted to leave where they're at and get away, but they didn't want to go too far because we had these romantic notions. And you walk through the woods, and they were going, yeah, but there are things out there. And we didn't understand, but it's like, I live in the city, and I said, well, it's like raccoons and pop. No, there are things out there in the dark, and they will eat you. And it's like, okay. So we just said, well, we use that dog trot as that kind of separation. And so we lined it up to create zones of privacy. So these are laid out in parallel to each other, so they each have their own view. They have their blind spots and their views down into this creek valley, and they have all pathways and such. And then we're doing about 4 or 5 different colors of wood, and then the front door sort of blends in with that, and it has a little marker where you know where to open the door up. A porch light. We're going to have some other lights that are embedded, but very stealthy, the floating porch up on the plinth. And we also had, it's all universal design. So that was the other thing. We thought, oh, we've got one cabin. And then the universe said, no, they all have to be universal design. So they're all integrated into the landscape through the manipulation of the terrain. It works quite well. And so they kind of bridge over into that. 14-foot wide cabins, very simple, just a simple layout. The porch is as big as the living room practically, so we wanted a big, generous porch. People could come and visit each other, but just they could be outside if they wanted to be. And then the bedroom, bathroom, a small kitchenette. Of course, you mostly take your meals in the gathering shed. Your porch, your dog trot, but we have a button or remote screen will come down and actually turns it into a screen porch. So on either side, it's just a big roll comes up. And you want to say something? Yeah,
there's also 6 different discrete places here to read a book or write. Because as a writer, you need to move around. Each time you change your space, you change your perspective, how you see a project. So even moving from the front porch to that window table, to the back porch, to the landing below, each time you move, you change how you see the world and how you see your project.
As we're negotiating a slope, and like you said, you come out of the dog trot, you can come down to the land and then catch onto the pathway down through the creeks and stuff. I want to take a walk, I need a mental break. I don't have to walk back through the house, I come right back out. And then there's the studio itself. You'll notice they'll have one window, but the windows are directional so that you never see from your studio the other cabins.
But you know the other cabin's there because you think you like the woods until you're in the woods.
Yeah, and you want a friend to come with you. So there's places for solitude and places for fellowship. So that's sort of the idea. And then on the inside, this is the kind of that studio for the writer. One of the things is at the Faulkner house on the left, it's probably going to have to come down, but one of the things we noticed is they have that Haint blue in the porch. So we calculated how many boards we have, and it's just enough that each writer studio will have Faulkner's porch floating over the ceiling in their studio. So that's where we're tying those two together. One will be weathered, and then in the rest of the cabinet, it'll all be new. It's all pine. We're using a pine plywood, really nice heart pine, and then pine floors as well, southern pine. But a beadboard is all it is. And that's it. We're using the camo as well. We have a big window that you can sit in, and then in the little narrow window there, that's where hummingbird feeder is, and you can feed the hummingbird. The hummingbirds can come, and you watch that, and then the little dog trot. And then we tried to change the material of the writer studio. So if you think about a keel boat on the Mississippi, you know, they have the little cargo pieces they put on the flat boats, and that's that little insertion of just something a little special.
Well, we're almost out of time, but can we give Marlon and his team?
But we have the last image.
Yes.
Well,
One more image.
One more image.
Sorry, I thought that was.
Yeah,
the last.
this is it. This is.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, this is the. I can't say money shot, but you know, this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Maxwell Parrish
apologies,
shot.
go
The
ahead.
Maxwell Parrish shot, and so
Indeed.
at night these things will turn. Imagine these little lanterns in the landscape, these cabins. And so this will be.
Ooh.
So
That was worth waiting for.
yeah. So
So
that's it. Thank
can we
you.
give Marlon and his team?
It really is great.
Thank you for being here, for being interested in this project, and we hope to see you in Mississippi.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Good edit, Stephen. Good edit.
Well, I think they did an incredible job giving you kind of predicate thought about what inspired this. My first reaction is that with economy of means you had to use with the budget that you have, I mean, my gosh, you all have just hit it out of the park to me. When I went to Oxford, I'm not going to talk long, we're closing, but I went to Roanoke and I wrote down some text of Faulkner's that was on the wall. And I thought about this before the event tonight. And Faulkner was given the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1960. And he wrote text that I'm going to read. It was this: I decline to accept the end of man. I believe that man will not merely endure, he will prevail. He is immortal, not because he alone among creatures has an inexhaustible voice, but because he has a soul, a spirit capable of compassion and sacrifice and endurance. And I think what they've done is given creative expression to exemplify the soul of man. And so you all, you get a high marks. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.